Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host, Michael Rearden.
I will say one of the things that I have learned from my teaching career, from coaching, is that there's got to be different personalities when you're dealing with a person. I'm not talking about schizophrenia. I'm talking about the aspect of you can give it to them easy, make it as simple for them, or you can give it to them the blunt truth, the hard truth, the tough pill to swallow, almost in a sense of mindset OD. And I think back when I was still an intern over at Rogers International School in Stamford, Connecticut, and there was a teacher, she was a kindergarten teacher, and she seemed like the sweetest teacher ever. And I'm talking about like the nicest person in the world. But she was super small too. She was like 5 feet or something. And she was teaching kindergarten. So all the kids, of course, are going to be smaller than her. So, to the kids, she was a giant, I'm sure. But she was so sweet to them, right? But then she had a firm hand to her too. Almost like it was like if you step out of line, you get bit almost. And it sounds like, oh man, this teacher can't be a wonderful teacher if she's over here biting the kids. And I'm talking about figuratively. She's not literally biting them, but she's adjusting them for the real world. Because everything in this world is not always butterflies and gumdrops and rainbows and everything is perfect. It takes some time to get acclimated to it. And luckily for school, we have bullying. We have, again, different teachers, good and bad. And it creates a dynamic where we can have that emotional fortitude that we need. However, we have taken away many things from our children. Before, if there was a issue, guess what? They might fight it out. There might be some minor altercation. But now it's a big thing. It's like, I have a gang and you have a gang and we're going to team up on you. And then it's just like this constant berating. And eventually, people are checking out because they're so stressed. They're anxious of what's going to happen next, fearful to go to school, and they're looking for a way out. However, there's a concept that if you are a parent and you're raising your child to live in the current present world that we're living in, a peaceful time, let's call it that, you are raising your child for failure. It's the sad truth. You don't wait until something is popular to say, hey, I'm going to go buy that stock. Hey, I'm going to get this because the sky rocket prices are going to be there waiting for you because everyone wants the supply and demand. But if we train our youth, our kids, or whoever for the next bit of life, because we can use forward thinking. However, many people lack that today, critical thinking skills, common sense. It's almost like we have said, we don't need those things anymore. It's almost like a VHS. And if you don't know what a VHS is, then of course I'm dating myself. And then you can already prove, or I can already prove that things of the past kind of become obsolete. MP3 players, we have CDs, the CDs you burn. And I know like there's always a funny video of like if you talk to like a new kid, like, Generation Alpha, and you say, hey, can you burn this CD? And they're literally getting a lighter and putting it under the CD. And they're like, this doesn't make any sense. Well, a lot of things won't make sense if the times are moving so quickly. And they say in the time of peace is when you should be training for a time of war. And heck, even in a time of war, you should maybe having envisions of time of peace, but you still prepare for war. So should we just have that concept of always being ready for a fight? My cooperating teacher, one of them, he says, you always have to be ready for bear. And I said, you got to be ready for bear. What does that mean? And basically you have to be ready. If you're going hiking or something, you have to have your bear mace, you have to have your shotgun or whatever to protect you from the bear. And it might seem like, why do I have to give myself this negative idea of something is going to happen to me? But it's not so much that something is going to happen to you, something will happen to you. A trauma, a hardship, a challenge, a dilemma. It's inevitable. That's the aspect of life. How many people are struggling today? How many people are suffering today? How many people are hoping and dreaming and wishing for an opportunity to change their current circumstance? Too many people. So if all of these people want change, that means they don't have the perfect life. Because I don't know people who have a wonderful life that they're looking to change. Most of the people who are happy with their family and happy with the resources that they have, they're enjoying everything. They're like, this is nice. I don't mind if we stay here for a while. Where most people are like, I can't wait till I get back home. I can't wait till I get a new job, or I can't wait till I get more money, or a new car, or a new relationship, or a new mindset, maybe. But when will that come? There has to be something that drives you to get there. And so I have learned from teachers and from just out in the world that there's going to be times when you can be sweet and loving and caring and respectful. And then there's times when you're going to be the opposite. You have to be that monster. You have to be that fierce type mentality and personality to present yourself so people understand something about you. In a sense, you might think that you're betraying yourself, right? Oh, I'm a good person. I want to be good. I want to do right. Everyone else is doing this, so I need to support them. And I'm not saying that you can't support who you want to support. What I'm saying is sometimes reality is going to be blatantly clear. And if you live in a false reality, where are you truly going? Because most people might be walking toward a cliff and they're like, oh, yeah, well, you know what? There might be a bridge there, right? It's, optimistic, like let's think about all the good things that can happen. We can team up and we can build a bridge. And sure enough, all of these things are viable. But there might be a reality that there is no bridge, or that the bridge that was there maybe got cut down, tore down, storm came, a rock boulder, something happened, the bridge is gone, right? We have to face that bit of reality. One of the things that's happening in the world, we have population issues, population collapse, like I think in Germany, maybe, I think there was one. I know Japan 100%, but the people are not having babies, right? So most of the things that have been taught from our grandfathers and grandmothers and even our great grandmothers and grandfathers, those things are being obsolete now, right? Again, we talked about being obsolete. Those things are not happening anymore. Let me tell you something about my grandparents. Old school, right? You did something wrong, you got a spanking. But here, no, not anymore, right? Oh, we need to talk about this. We need to figure out their emotions, and we need to talk to them about their emotions, and we need to navigate them because they don't know how to deal with it emotionally. Well, you know what? We got, when we were growing up, we got a spanking, and we got told to go outside and play, right? We got told to put some dirt on it. And you might think, well, that's not positive parenting. That's not good parenting, right? There's so much psychological damage that is done to the child. And in a sense, yes, there is going to be some type of traumas. There is going to be some type of perceptions the child's going to have to deal with later on in life. But those hardships make for stronger, resilient children, or rather adults later on in life. So if we know that giving a child adversity will strengthen them in the end, it's very similar to how if you go to the gym and you're building muscle. Yes, you're going to the gym and you might not be able to lift a certain amount of weight today, but you go the next week and you go again the next month, and then you're testing out your strength every single time. Guess what? Eventually, you're going to find yourself accomplishing the things that you weren't able to do previously. So on the first attempt, you might have failed. Second attempt, maybe even the 100th attempt. But then you keep on trying. You remain consistent. You're resilient to that. So there's an aspect of, well, you need people to push you more than what you want to push yourself. Because if you're on a treadmill, guess what? You have a problem because you're the only person that's fighting with yourself right now, right? The machine is doing its own thing. It's automatic. But you know what your brain is doing too? It's automatic. It's saying, hey, we need to get off this sucker because this thing is uncomfortable. Let's find comfort once more. Because if we can find comfort, if we can find a good place for us where we're, not in panic and our heart's not beating too much and it doesn't feel like I'm going to throw up and it feels like, I'm back to being safe. But what is safe? What does safe truly mean? Does safe mean that you have a 9-to-5 job and that, you can barely pay your bills and that you're looking for just enough to get by? Or does safe mean that you are someone who is always trying to propel yourself to be prepared for the next situation? For example, what I was talking about with we train individuals in times of peace for times of war. And then you should always have that mentality, essentially, right? That's basically talking about forward thinking. We're saying, hey, if we want to look at the future, we need to be prepared for the future. Think of a hurricane, right? Hurricanes are terrible. They're a disaster, a natural disaster that causes so much hardship for so many individuals. So many people have become displaced. What, in 2003, I believe it was Katrina or something, or maybe 2006, I forget. That situation was atrocious, right? The things that happened with FEMA, the people that were displaced, and there was people who didn't have anything to go home to. So many of the people that was, over there, living in New Orleans, they said, hey, there's nothing here for me. For example, my barber, he's from New Orleans. He has a barbershop, and guess what? He said there was nothing else. There's nothing to build here. So he left and he was able to build, right? That hardship caused resilience within him. And now he has a thriving business. But that didn't happen overnight. Now, going back to the topic of, these natural disasters that come in, it's not always going to be smooth weather, right? We are going to have inclement weather that's coming in and it's going to, tear some stuff off. A tornado comes and rips off your roof and things like that, right? Now you have no electricity. You have no water. You have maybe even no resources because maybe you were a person that didn't prepare. And I'm not talking about you need to be a prepper and you need to get some food storage and you need to get some water storage and you need to get some flashlights and some batteries and a boat if you live near the water. I'm not saying that you need all of those things, but I'm talking about a preparation type mindset. And this doesn't happen if you just live in peace and you think everything's going to be, gumdrops or rainbows, as I said. So there is this aspect of tough love where we have the sugar and spice type mentality. And I've talked about it on the podcast before because it's so powerful. If you want something in your life, be it a career, a relationship, just overall well-being, right? Fitness maybe, right? You have to overcome some level of adversity, the tough love that you have to give yourself. So when you're sweating and you're huffing and puffing and you're like, I can't do it again, you get up and you do it again. Because if you're tired, you do it tired. That's the tough love. Now, of course, I know, Michael, you got to be more positive. You got to be more optimistic, Michael. Well, sure. Let's be optimistic for a second. There is a way to do it. It's not participation trophies, what's happening. It's not saying, oh, you'll get them next time. It's not, you did your best, right? No. Like that right there is not beneficial to anyone. If you want sweet, right? The sugar and spice, you want the sugar, right? Let's talk about what happened. So tell me what happened, right? What do you recollect? And then we talk about plans in order to change the circumstance or the outcome next time. Yeah, we don't have to yell. We don't have to scream because I'm going to say the same exact thing. When I say it, you're going to see that there's a sugar way and then there's a spice way. All right. I already said it today, but I'm going to say it again. If you're tired, do it tired. It doesn't matter what you want. Okay. If you're tired, do it tired. It doesn't matter what you want. Guess what? It's the same thing. It's just tone, right? I'm just using different tones and you have to have different tones. Like, for example, if you're a parent, you probably know tones. Let's say the name of the kid is Johnny, right? Johnny's a very common name. Johnny, I told you not to do this, right? So you're yelling and you're screaming and Johnny's like, oh my God, like it's blaring. It's like, Johnny, I thought we talked about this. We're not doing it anymore, right? So there's two different ways to speak. And which was the right way? There is no right way to speak to your child in the sense of your child is unique and you need to understand your child. If your child needs to be yelled at, you yell at your child. If your child doesn't need to be yelled, you don't yell at your child. You have to understand what type of person you're raising and what personality you have. Because, for example, my kid, if you raise your voice just a little bit, the tears show, right? Oh, it's tears. And again, it's only 2, going on 3. But that's the reality of children, right? They're going to be emotions, they're dealing with things. And I know at a later age when he's, 5 and 6 and stuff, he's going to be hard, cold, solid steel because of the forging process. It's not only the sugar, it's a lot more spice than it's going to be sugar. And we allow him to deal with his emotions, right? We allow him to self-regulate. But in our world today where, parents are so quick to go run and, protect their children, and it's a good instinct to have. I know we were at the library the other day and, one of the kids snatched the ball away from my son and the mom was like, oh my God. And, I guess I look kind of scary. I don't know why people think I'm scary, but whatever. So she was like, oh my God. And then she was like walking to like go stop what was happening, with her 4-year-old son. And I was like, no, just leave it. It's okay. And then she was like, oh, okay. And so she was a bit confused because she was like, why are we not going to save your son? And I'm like, he doesn't need to be saved. He needs to deal with that level of adversity that he's going through. It doesn't matter if he's 2. It doesn't matter your age, because you can have hardship at 2 years old and you could have hardship at 200 years old if you live that long. And, most people don't. But if you have hardship, it could be at any age, right? Traumas don't wait until you're a certain age. It happens all the time. I know there's, sad stories of, children, they lose their parents. And, unfortunately, as a teacher, you see that where you have a student come in and, they say their parents are sick or something. And, sure enough, down the road, they succumb to their illness. And you have to deal with that as a teacher. And you have to deal with it as, as an adult around that child. And basically, you just give them a safe place in a sense, right? Because they're more tender at that time. And you do have to understand there's a time to push and there's a time to kind of say, hey, let's take off the reins a little bit, right? If you don't know that, then that is what you need to learn right now, right? And this is what I'm talking about, the sugar and spice method, is you need to know when to push and you need to know when to push off, all right, or to let go. If you are a coach, typically you can get almost every ounce of your player that they have within them, right? You can drop every ounce of potential, on the game or, in their field or in their career or whatever, because you know how to do it, right? Coaches get paid big money, especially sports coaches, because they understand how to pull the potential out of that player, out of that person. They just don't look at their physical prowess. They also look at who that person is. For example, let's use Michael Jordan as an example. Michael Jordan is one of the greatest, if not the greatest basketball player that has ever existed. Now, the one thing about Michael is he talks so much junk to players on the game and he would start all these scuffles, right? This is when basketball was real basketball. Now, if someone touches you, like a little tap, you're flying across the court saying, oh my God, this person assaulted me. Well, the game has changed, right? So people kind of acclimate to that change, but becoming softer in a world of soft and marshmallows and things like that is definitely not a good thing, right? We need that type of player that's going to say, hey, let's be fierce, right? Let's be, that spark. And that's why people say Michael is one of the greatest, right? Because even with Kobe, he wasn't as fierce, but his mentality was fierce. LeBron is very competitive, but he doesn't have that, that spark to fight, within him, right? He has this air of him that, he can be great and he is great. But there's a difference between a warrior and a training warrior that's, coming up and coming, right? Michael has done it, right? He is that person who has gone through that toughness. He had to go through that adversity. I know LeBron was talking about recently about his son. His son is in the NBA now with him playing on the Lakers. And so what happened was he was like, I don't know many children who can grow up in an affluent home with money and houses and with everything that you can ever wish for, want and dream. But, he was able to have this desire to want to play in the NBA and he pushed himself and he had open heart surgery or something like that, right? Because he took, something happened with his heart or something, right? So he had to go for surgery, and he's able to come out on top, right? Because he had that fire within him. Where did that come from? Did that come from, him just saying, hey, you need to do this, or hey, take your time, take it easy? Because I've seen both, right? I've seen both from rich people. They have those kids that they spoiled, that they love, and they say, oh my God, like we got to make sure it stays protected. And there's some like, oh, they're kids and they're going to deal with it and they're going to figure it out, right? Those children turn out to be more resilient later on in life. Now, the story with Bronny's LeBron's son, LeBron would go to his games and he would sit there and he had this fierce look, right? He would cheer and things like that. But one of the things that I saw and that I can see from LeBron and Bronny is that LeBron had the word I want to use is not so much of like the, potential and like achievement things, right? Like the burden of achievement, but more of these are my expectations, right? And the expectations is you can do whatever you want. And if you want to play basketball, if you want to do good, great, I will support you. If you don't want to do it, great, figure out what else you want to do with life, right? So there was that path that he was able to take, right? And then so he got to choose what he wanted to do. Versus parents today, they're like, whatever you do, I'll be happy, right? Of course, we look at maybe Tom Brady, for example, right? His mom, super supportive. She was that sugar in his life. And the dad was definitely more sugar than spice, but he gave Tom Brady the spice he needed. And then more spice came from the players and more spice came from the coaches, where he was able to figure out the balance he needed, right? I'm not sure if you have ever ate something that was super salty or super spicy or super sugary, like so sugary, like it feels like your teeth are getting cavities while you're eating. Guess what? Sometimes in life, you have to be able to differentiate between what is happening, right? Is this too easy? Is this too hard? Or is this just right? Now, most people might think, oh, Michael, just right is probably the right answer. No. It needs to be too hard, right? Now, when I say it needs to be too hard, we are going to use a grain of salt here. Because if we don't, you're just going to say, I'm going to do everything that's hard and I'm going to keep on failing. And then eventually your mindset is going to become dilapidated because your mindset is not already strong. So either way, let's talk about that aspect. The aspect is we want things that challenge us, but we also need things that are going to be plausible to the brain and to the mind that we can accomplish. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to accomplish them immediately, right? For example, if I want to maybe paint my house, I know it's going to take me maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, right? I'm not going to go on my first day of painting my house and I'm going to say, oh, man, like this is never going to be done, right? Because I understand I paint a little bit today, maybe I paint a little bit tomorrow, maybe I paint like one coat and then the next coat because it needs like multiple coats, maybe, right? So I'm painting little by little, and I understand the goal is the house is painted, right? But it takes time. It takes maybe, again, it could take a week, it could take 2 weeks, a month, like who knows, right? Depending on weather and things like that too. Now we understand it takes time for the process. The body I have, it didn't happen overnight, right? I saw a picture of an arm, right? It was like an arm of like a regular person, right? But there was no body or anything. It was just an arm, and the arm was just straight. It had no muscles, nothing, right? No cuts, whatever. And then eventually, like they said, progress, consistency. So the next time, it was a little bit bigger. The arm was a little bit more, defined. It has some muscle to it. Yeah, I was like, okay, looking good, right? Most people would accept that. But then there's a third picture. Now, this arm was like even bigger than the previous arm. You can see the veins, and it was like this guy works out, or this arm at least works out. Well, you have to ask yourself, what type of arm do you want? And the arm is the figurative metaphor of life. What type of life do you want? Do you want the life that's all sugar and, sweet and everything is going your way, and then the moment something happens, you fall apart? Sure. Do you want a life that's going to be more spicy, more adventurous? something that's going to, require you to pay attention, and you have to overcome challenges, and you have to ask for help and not being afraid to dare to fail. Okay, great. That's spice, right? Now, of course, you can find a nice middle ground. Most people call it a 9-to-5 job, right? That, they call it marriage, maybe, with someone that they, don't talk to or whatever. They just kind of say, well, like we're just for each other or whatever. Maybe, right? So everything in their life is not elevated. It's just kind of bland. And I don't know how many people want to eat chicken with no seasoning on it. It doesn't taste good. Or steak with no seasoning on it. It doesn't taste good, right? You need a little bit of salt. You need a little bit of pepper. You need a little bit of spice. And in life, you need that spice, because if you don't have it, it's going to become more difficult for every single subsequent generation to follow. Now, there will be a black sheep generation that comes, of course, in ever of your lineage, if you want to have kids, right? In ever of your lineage, there's always going to be someone who says, I'm not going to do what my parents did. I'm not going to do what my grandparents did or whatever, right? Because they understand something, that hardship and difficulty and challenge is going to be one of the main factors if a person is going to achieve wonderful things in their life. You do have to understand that as we are revolving and going past each and all of these generations, there's going to have to be something where you wake up, and I'm going to tell my kids it's the same thing. The moment you want to be sweet and loving with your kids and you want to give them the life that they never had, stop that thought and say, you know what? I'm going to give my kids the life that they're going to be a part of my life because you have chosen how to live. And then you give them whatever is needed and necessary for them to grow up and be strong. So you have to forward think. You have to say, where will the world be in 80 years? I know 80 years is a long time. We don't have crystal balls. But like I say, if you train in a time of peace for war, you will be ready when the war is there. So we train knights in the era where there's no dragons, because we understand that one day they might have to draw their sword. And if we can give them that tough love, if we can give them that spice they need in their life, no matter where they are, they're going to be able to differentiate between if they need to give some sugar or if they need to get some spice. That is going to be one of the secrets to mindset. Sometimes it's going to be that tough love, that spice, and sometimes it's going to be that sugar, right? There is a balance when you're raising a child, and then there is a balance when you're an adult. But as you grow up and you become more resilient, you should definitely have more spice in your life. And if you don't like spice, then are you truly living life?